all the things over which we do not have no control? What if every single person were to do whatever tiny, imperfect, and incomplete thing they had in their power? After all, there are things for which you're not guilty, for which you might nevertheless be responsible. Take it from someone who has spent a lifetime pondering the question of what you do when you find yourself, through no fault of your own, proximate to the mother lode of guilt. I haven't mentioned Song of the South yet, but I could go on. We need to take all of the responsible investment, folks, and take all that you do and all of your thinking and all of the influence that you have in your sector and figure out how, as much good as you do, to have an impact on decreasing all the bad that is being done in spite of you. Because right now the scale looks like this, and we need to bring ourselves to scale. And it starts with each of us as an individual. I know the problem is the system, but the system is made up of millions of tiny individuals. And if the individuals in the system choose to behave differently, the system will behave differently. So I want to conclude rather with an incomplete and bossy sounding list of how, as an individual, you can start to make trouble where trouble needs making. So it starts with never confuse the status quo with the inevitable. We do that all the time, don't we? The going rate is the minimum wage. This is how we handle a transaction. Take the oath the doctors do when they, at graduation, get handed their stethoscopes. First, do no harm. Number 2, question everything. And when questioning it, forces you to stumble across an answer that will make people think you're a nudge for saying it, something that is inconvenient, something that sounds naive. Be a nudge and say it. Get over it. It won't kill you. And if you don't say the hard things, who's going to say them? And if you do say the hard things, who's going to feel emboldened to join you? It's not going to happen unless somebody chooses to start it. I remember saying in a private equity meeting something about, like, we're investing in a company that does parking brakes for SUVs, like, but the environment. And everybody looked at me like I was, I don't know, needed to be wrapped up in a white jacket, carried away. It was kind of striking. 3, notice who's in the room with you, and then notice who's not in the room with you. I'm noticing a lot of people not in the room with us right now. When you notice who's not in the room with you, make a decision to use your power to fight for and defend the people who are not. Number 4, recognize that it's not enough to be nice. Choose instead to be good. Sometimes being requires you not to be nice, I'm sorry to say. 5, I'm told that all the time. Recognize that you may be doing the right thing about the environment, which is great, but at the same time, you might be doing the wrong thing for the living, breathing, actual human beings you're working with. And I don't care how good you're doing for the environment. The guy who's in charge of the gate at heaven, I suspect it's probably the guy, he's not going to care. You won't get in. 6, if you can find a way not to be rich or famous, you will be freed and empowered in ways that you cannot even begin to imagine. Not needing every last dime on the table and not needing all the credit is a very powerful thing. And I know you're grumbling inside that it's very easy for me to say that. Money, yes, solves problems all the time, up to a point. Of course it does. But after that point, and there's science that says $75,000 a year, don't ask me how. But after that point, it asks more questions than it answers honestly. And if at the end of every transaction you are not remembered as the person who needed to walk away with all the glory and the very last penny, you'll be amazed at all the people who want to keep working with you. 7, find allies and hold them close. Build a company that's like a family. 8, never think of anyone as the enemy. No one is disposable or irredeemable or beyond change. The hardest, actually I should say, the vast majority of people are not beyond change. The hardest and most generous thing in the world to do is to change your mind. And the people who do change their minds are the most powerful and wonderful allies of them all. And I would urge you, I know I'm a producer and I make you go see my movie, but Armor of Light, it's on place on iTunes and Amazon and all the rest of that stuff. You'll see an evangelical minister, very right-wing, change his mind on camera, and it's kind of an extraordinary thing. Number 9, learn to love being the person that people roll their eyes at whenever they walk in the room. Just learn to love it. It's never going to stop. And if you learn to love that, then you will never get tired. Then you'll never go home depressed. Just be the pain in everyone's tushies. And it's really kind of actually delightful. Number 10, tell the truth all the time. Be transparent. It's nice not to have to remember what you told somebody last week. Lying is like that. I learned everything about lying from watching I Love Lucy religiously as a child. She was just constantly putting me in this state of anxiety. She would lie, and then I'd be like, oh, Lucy, why didn't you tell the truth? Now we're going to be in so much trouble. It also has the added benefit of making people trust you, which goes a long, long way. Oh, and by the way, it's also the right thing to do, period, end of story. And finally, the last one is, you can't hope to finish this work in your lifetime. Just know that. There is work to be done, a lot of it, and it's going to take a long time. Companies, big companies like Disney and others, are going to take decades to shift their cultures. They're going to have to. They're not going to have a choice. So I don't have the luxury of a lot of decades on my timeline, and many of you don't either. But you can move the needle. You can move the needle, even just a little bit, if you recognize the small victories. Bring them into your heart, honor them, remember them. Because if you do that, what you hand off to your kids will be much more realistic. And they will be more than able and willing to finish the work for you. And wouldn't that be the most wonderful outcome that you can possibly imagine? So thank you, and I appreciate the chance to badger you for a few minutes. I think we're supposed to do Q&A. Yes? 6:24, 3, 2, 1.
Yep, we're happy to take some questions. If anyone has any questions,
You don't have to.
raise your arm in the air. We have some mic runners, and identify
There's
yourself.
someone over here.
Questions, not statements.
Someone over here.
It's a bit of a minor question, but you mentioned that Milton Friedman was influenced by French ideas. I can tell you that as a French, I did not recognize...
No, I did say he was influenced by French ideas. Did I say that?
Yeah, you... I
French.
I was offended, but now I'm fine. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry if you took offense to that, but French, yes. He was influenced by Hayek, who was German. Yeah. No, it's the German stuff. Yes.
Follow that. Believe it or not, we have something in common, though no one has ever heard of my great-great-grandfather. How do you handle your last name and all the stuff that goes along with that? And you've spoken so eloquently and so familiarly. It doesn't have to be serious, it can be even anecdotal. But how do you handle that, where you walk into the room and already people are thinking this or that about you?
What's your last name? I'm curious.
Suitor means nothing.
Okay.
Come to the 2:30
Okay.
section over there.
Yeah, you're right. You walk into a room and everybody's drawing a conclusion about you before you walk in. And that is hard. That is a pain, really. Every time I use my credit card, there's a question to be answered, and that's not always a happy one. So it used to always be a happy one, by the way. The brand is in trouble. I spent my 20s lying to everybody I met, saying I wasn't related, because it was just too complicated and too hard. And I was carrying so much shame in my 20s, which you may think is a nutty thing, but is, if you meet anybody who comes from a family with a lot of resources, you know, at least 50% of the kids hold a huge amount of shame, no matter how you try to raise them around it. It's normal. And actually, it's probably healthy, because it forced me to really analyze. I was going to get rid of it when I got married. I thought about it. I came right up to the edge of it. Big feminist, of course I would. And then I thought, no, there's something in it that is asking something of me, and I don't know what that is yet, but I would be ducking a responsibility if I were to walk away from it. And I'm glad I made that choice, because I'm more proud of it than I was. I mean, I realize I was always proud of it, and it's a very useful tool. It's a very useful tool.
Hi, Delilah Rothenberg with the Pre-Distribution Initiative. Thanks so much for this. I really appreciate the work that you're doing around executive to average worker compensation ratios and raising awareness about it. And I was wondering if you spent much time thinking about fund manager compensation, which can be even higher than the average corporate executive.
Yeah.
And then also you mentioned that we're in systems and we're individuals within systems. And so I'm wondering what your thoughts are on incentive structures for individuals at the investor level, for investment professionals, for corporate executives, for middle management, all the way down to the worker to better integrate ESG. Because as long as we're so focused on IRR and financials as performance metrics, we're not going to be focusing on the long term.
You know, two of the things that I think have been most deleterious to investing overall are IRR and basis points. Because a basis point is 1/100th of a, that's a tiny thing, and we treat basis points like, cataclysmic. And so they have trained us like animals to react to a change in just a tiny bit, as though, the world is falling down. And the other, IRR, attaches a time value to money. And so the two things kind of just raise the temperature in every single room in a way that I think rewards greed and